Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and thanks for watching. Well, we have the Auditor General of the state of Pennsylvania on our program. We're going to push him a little bit on politics. He's been running around the state getting the endorsements of the Democratic organizations throughout the Commonwealth. We'll check in on that. And then following that, we're going to do a little update on what's going on in the Pennsylvania legislature. Let me say this. It's all about the presidential politics, but the legislature is still there, and, well, they're at work. All of that and more when we return.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. We have as our guest the Auditor General of the state of Pennsylvania, Jack Wagner.
Hi, Terry. How
Auditor
are you?
General. That's what they actually say, right? General.
Jack.
And you don't even have any epaulets on. No, great. Hey, thanks for coming on. I know you're a busy guy. We really appreciate your coming on. Look, I want to get into, we have the gasoline going through the roof here, the prices. I want to talk about the gasoline audit because I think that's something that our viewers will care about, what they, what's going on at the pump. But before they do this, let's talk about politics. Now, the last time you were on, I pressed you to ask if you were going to be a candidate for governor, and you gave me what answer?
One election at a time. I'm running for re-election for Auditor General this year. I'm totally focused on that and doing a good job as Auditor General.
Yeah. Well, I knew you're focused on it because I keep reading all of these endorsements, that you're going around to various. Obviously, it's a Democratic primary. You're mostly focusing at this point on Democrats. All right, well, then let me go to another question since you didn't, your hedge your bets, but that's okay. We all know he's going to run for governor, but he won't say it. All right, let's go to the other important question. Democrats are in, a major battle here in the state. Finally, our voters get a chance, right? Finally, we all get a chance to vote. Unfortunately for the Republicans, their race is over. I think our voters need a chance to participate in them. Do you have a candidate in the Democratic presidential primary?
I am still open-minded and am looking at both candidates. Hopefully, I'll make a decision prior to April 22nd. I want to hear the candidates discuss the issues in greater detail.
Right.
Senator Clinton and Senator Obama, I think, need to be more specific on certain economic issues.
Right.
I want to hear a more definitive plan on Iraq. As you know, I'm a Vietnam veteran.
Yep.
This war is longer than the Second World War, is approaching the length of Vietnam. I want to see an end to this war. There's been too many Americans killed, seriously wounded. Too many people were serving multiple tours in Iraq. I want to hear some more definitive plans as to what the strategy is in Iraq. We need to get out of Iraq. On the economic issues, the federal deficit. I'm the Auditor General. I look at numbers all the time. The federal deficit in this country is through the roof. You don't hear any of the candidates talking about how we're going to balance the federal budget. Let's talk about that issue. So I want to hear more definitive plans by both of those candidates prior to choosing one.
Yeah, I thought maybe there was something in the water in western Pennsylvania where you got the county executive who's neutral, you got the mayor of Pittsburgh who's neutral, and we've got yourself. Obviously, you're a Pittsburgh boy, right?
Pittsburgh guy.
Pittsburgh guy.
Yeah.
So all three of the biggest political leaders in the state from western Pennsylvania have been decided. And I think that is, maybe it's a coincidence. You all haven't talked about this, have you?
No, I haven't spoke with either of those two gentlemen in regard to endorsing a candidate. Terry, I know the way I am. I make a decision. I'm not afraid to make a call as to who I'm supporting and why I'm supporting them.
No. I don't think anybody should suggest that. You've always been kind of independent. You're your own guy. I don't think anybody would begin to suggest.
But I think all this is good for Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I think this is very exciting. No matter where I go, and I'm talking about across the entire state, I see record crowds of people showing up at political events. They're energized. They're involved, whether it's for Hillary or Barack. People want to be heard today.
Yeah.
And more people are registering than ever before in my lifetime. That's all good.
Yeah. Well, you're right about that. But there isn't any doubt that, you're going to support the nominee.
I will.
You can. I'm hearing from Democrats who, like yourself, have not made a decision that, they could. And by the way, the voters seem to indicate. Actually, the voters are more accepting of the two candidates than a lot of activists who, you know, have gotten a little bit, this thing is a little testy between the, and, you know, this is sort of the nature of the primary process anyway. It shouldn't unduly worry anyone because Republicans have internal fights and Democrats have, as long as they don't get too destructive.
Well, we did not intend it for it to happen this way, but Pennsylvania is very fortunate.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania is the big state left in the process.
By inertia.
By inertia.
Because our legislature
You're right.
would. Now,
Right.
did you ever? What's your position on it? Should you think in general? Forget this year where we're big players. Do you think we ought to move our primary forward a little
When
bit?
I was a state senator, I had a bill for 3 or 4 terms to move the primary up to early March.
Yeah, good for you. Well, if it had been certain date March 4, there'd have been 4 states, or well, there were 4, but there would have been a 5th, and we would have been a player. All right, we're going to ask the Auditor General. We'll get down to business now. We're going to ask him about the gas audit following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Pennsylvania Medical Society. Doctors and patients, preserve the relationship. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program. I'm chatting with Jack Wagner. He's the Auditor General of the state of Pennsylvania. I want to talk, General Wagner, let's talk a little bit about gasoline, the audit you did, and what advice you would have to consumers about what they ought to do given this, you know, what seems like an incredible long run of rising gasoline prices that seems to me never related to supply and demand. I must have missed all this in economics because demand is down a bit and the supply is up and the price still goes up. Go ahead. What did you find?
Well, we completed an audit approximately a year ago of the Weights and Measures Division of Department of Agriculture, who is required to inspect all gasoline pumps in the Commonwealth once a year. What we found out was that we were not doing a good job at it. That in more than 1 in 5 gasoline stations, there was more than 1 gasoline pump with missing or outdated inspection stickers.
Why is that important?
Well, it's important because when you buy 10 gallons of gas, you want to be sure you're getting 10 gallons of gasoline. So we're required, the Commonwealth,
$3.50 a gallon, right?
The Commonwealth is required to do an annual inspection of every gasoline pump. Some counties do that, but in the majority of counties, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania does that. But what we also found was that we only inspect for quantity. In other words, if you buy 10 gallons of gas, making sure you get 10 gallons. So we completed this audit. A number of recommendations. Department of Agriculture, Weights and Measures Division is implementing them.
Really?
Yes, we're very pleased.
What is that about? What are they implementing?
Well, they've hired more inspectors.
Okay.
They have more efficient fuel tanks where they go around, and it's not done in an antiquated way. It's much more efficient, much safer today. But what we also found, Terry, was that we do not inspect for quality. In other words, when you buy your gasoline and put it into your car, you don't know if it's 92 octane. Because no one's inspecting to make sure it is. So we want to see Pennsylvania add to the inspection process, especially with the price of gasoline hitting record highs of $3.20. It could be $4 before the year's out.
Right.
So Pennsylvania is only one of 4 states that does not inspect for quality.
That doesn't make
We
any
want to
sense.
see a bill passed by the General Assembly soon. House Bill 684 has passed the House. It's been sitting in the Senate for a couple months. We want to see it finally passed.
What's the problem in the Senate? You're a former state senator.
A former state senator. Evidently, there's some resistance to it.
By the oil companies?
Maybe. I'm really not sure. But it passed overwhelmingly in the House. Pennsylvania, Nebraska, Alaska, Ohio, and Pennsylvania are the only 4 states that do not inspect for quality.
Right.
The public deserves to know when they're paying $3.20, they're getting a full gallon of gasoline, and it's of the quality that they're paying for.
Yep. Is there any other legislation that you've recommended as part of this, or is it just the inspection aspect that you talked about, the quality aspect?
It's just the quality component of it.
All right. As always, I want to thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
You do some more audits, let us know. We'll
Happy to be here.
You can check in with us, or we'll check in with you.
Okay.
All right, when we come back, we're going to check in with our friends over in the capital of the state of Pennsylvania, where the legislature has been hard at work doing something with Governor Rendell's budget. With all the news about the presidential election underway, not much coverage in the last few weeks on the legislature. We'll get an update following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, as I said before we left, the legislature is in session. I know all of this intense interest in the Pennsylvania presidential primary, and for good reason. But joining me for a quick update on what's going on the Hill, as they say in Harrisburg, is Gene Barr. He's the Government Affairs Vice President for the Chamber of Commerce, Business and Industry.
Right. Sure.
Yeah, in Lancaster, I think it's the Lancaster Commerce. Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
But we know what it is, right?
We understand.
All right, Gene, let's look. The candidates are in the state. They're going to presidential candidates. Healthcare is going to move center stage, right?
Absolutely.
All right, give us a quick. What is Governor Rendell? Governor Rendell originally wanted to cover some 900,000 people uninsured in the state, and he wanted to use a payroll tax. That when it went into the legislature, the word thud comes to mind. So where does all that stand?
You're right. They got no traction. None of the payroll tax issues got traction. There was discussion about doing tobacco taxes. That seems not to have gone anywhere as well, because the no new tax mantra is pretty strong right now in the Capitol. House Democrats are in the middle of unveiling their plan, which is comparable in that it seeks to go after these 800,000 uninsured folks and try and take care of them and try and get them some affordable health care, doing it without tax increases, they say, trying to utilize some of the M-Care abatements, which we've talked about on your program before, that the doctors and hospitals are utilizing, some people believe to be a surplus in that.
Right.
So over the next few weeks, that's going to continue to get attention, and as you say, it's a national issue, and with the candidates in Pennsylvania, that clearly is an issue that's going to be resonating in the media over the next month or so.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just don't think, and I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Tell me, you're a smart guy. You follow this stuff more closely than I do. Isn't this really an issue that should be resolved nationally?
There's a lot of people that believe that, and I think rather than have a patchwork of states, many people are saying that. And I think that a lot of folks fall into that. I think that, as you know, our concern has been trying to address some of the things that make health care more expensive and thereby drive health insurance costs, because there is a distinction between the two. So trying to address some of the things on a state-by-state basis that address health care coverage or health care costs, but to try and address this on a more broader perspective rather than a patchwork of areas. And, we truly do believe that incentivizing employers, getting employers to offer this, and cutting down those things that make health care more expensive and addressing those is crucial for this debate.
Yeah, I mean, we hear a lot, you're right, we hear more about covering more people than we do about getting rid of the fraud and waste in the system. I mean, we have these big federal programs like Medicare and Medicaid, and as everybody knows, have fraud problems, have inefficiency problems. I mean, the money that probably could be saved by that alone could be could go to help people who don't have any coverage.
Well, certainly fraud and waste are issues that we need to take a look at. What's interesting is we tend to get into these things, and I think now, as I said, with the presidential primaries here is a great time to drill down past the easy answers. And people always say, gee, it's the uninsured, they're utilizing emergency room services. I saw a study recently that showed the highest utilizers of emergency room services are Medicare, Medicaid patients.
Yeah.
So folks that are already on and getting that safety net are the ones that are actually using emergency room services at a higher rate than uninsured. So some of the things that I think for years we thought were true about health care may not be true.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question. Even with the governor's program, which I think everybody thought was pretty ambitious, and Democrats have a new version of it that they unveiled last week, there is still the question that even under Rendell's plan, only a couple 100,000 of the 800,000 or 900,000 people would be covered anyway. Am I correct about that?
That's true. That's what it looks like. And again, I think that one of the things that we're cautioning, while we're very happy to see no new taxes, and the payroll tax, as you mentioned, really hit with a thud. It got no traction. But one of the things we have to be very cautious about, looking at other states that have attempted similar programs, such as Massachusetts, they significantly underestimated how much money it would take to run these programs.
Oh, well,
we have to be very cautious about
that goes for just almost any federal program.
Right.
All right, we're going to run to a quick break. We're going to talk about energy. Boy, that's another issue that's playing out in the presidential politics. Environmentally friendly energy program, that's the word of the day. We'll be back and see what Gene Barr's word of the day is following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Penn Future, where we believe that every environmental victory grows the economy, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the Pennsylvania Newsmakers. I'm chatting with Gene Barr from the Pennsylvania Chamber. Gene, one of the other big promotions of Governor Rendell, part of his second-term agenda, is energy, and we've talked about that on occasion. He wanted to float $850 million in bonds over, I think, 4 years. There was an alternate plan put in the Senate with less money and over a longer period of time to do what we could call environmentally friendly energy, technology advancements, grants, and things to promote, clean and renewable sources of energy.
Right.
First of all, where does that stand at the moment?
Well, great question. As you already noted, the governor's put his $850 million plan, and that passed the House once. The Senate passed their version of it, as you mentioned, less borrowing, less total dollars. The House has now passed the $850 million again in the House special session on energy.
Right.
So that's now back in the Senate. And we'll see where that goes. I don't know that, based on what we're hearing, there's any more appetite for that level of spending, again, from the Senate side. Now, the good thing is they're pulling back on the electricity tax that was a huge concern for us and for our members who are very energy intensive.
Yeah, I mean, on the individual consumer price, a couple bucks a year, not a lot, but on the business side it had some potentially huge costs.
Sure did, because it was geared not to the size of the business, but the energy-intensive nature of the business, and that's an important distinction.
Yeah. So, I mean, as always, there's going to be a compromise on this.
Yes.
If they were to do the Senate plan, which is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong,
$650 million, with $250 million of that as borrow, utilizing some existing and new expanded tax revenues, that is through the gross receipts tax, because electric prices are expected to go up, utilizing the additional revenues from the GRT for that reason.
Right. So that, and spread out over a longer period of time. So the point is that would be done without any borrowing.
Only $250 million in borrowing.
$250 million borrowing, but it would be paid off over a long period of time, and there wouldn't be a lot of additional new, if any additional new taxes, which, as you point out, is sort of persona non grata if a tax can be a person.
They're not getting much traction there, certainly.
Yeah. All right. Let me turn, before you go, to one other issue. Actually a theme more. What's your sense about how the legislature is going to deal with this and other topics? There have been problems in the Democratic caucus in the House. You follow this pretty closely, keeping a majority in. They've had to postpone some things, keep postponing things. Do you think that the legislature is going to be able to accomplish the smoking ban, energy, health care, the governor's budget? I could go on with some other things. What's your sense about what you think the legislature will be able to accomplish this spring?
Well, that's a great question. We know that they have to do a budget by the end of June 30.
Well, they don't. They have, but they should.
Theoretically.
Theoretically,
For
right.
5 years, we've certainly gone into July, in certain cases, well beyond. These are some big issues to try and tackle. I mean, trying to look at health care and energy, as we've talked about today, wrapping your arms around that is huge. Not to mention the fact we've got that very tight margin in the House, and you've got the Republicans that have hung together pretty well on things, and the Democrats have to make sure all their folks are there on any given day. It's going to be a very exciting 3-4 months here coming in.
Yeah, I mean, and then we have the Bonus Gate investigation, and there were new subpoenas just issued on that by the Attorney General, and that seems to be reverberating. I guess that's sitting over the whole legislature with whether another shoe drops and whether the Attorney General actually indicts folks.
Right. That's just looming over everything, you know, without a doubt.
And creating a very difficult environment.
It is. It creates that uncertainty. And, again, as we're headed into another budget season with some very big issues on the table, having that loom there just creates that greater uncertainty in people's minds.
Yeah, and what's the latest on the economy nationally is a bit shaky. We we're not going to get into details of it. State looks like it's going to have about a $200 million surplus now. Some say it could reach $500 million.
Well, the governor said over $500 million.
I mean, is that a figure that there's a general consensus about?
It seems to be. I mean, that's what his people are putting their figures out to. So, you know, we'll certainly look at that and assume that's the case and see where we wind up with that. That's, of course, driving a lot of his economic stimulus proposals as well.
All right, but then what typically happens is if the revenues begin to fall off, then we could have a shortfall next year, and so you know where I'm heading with this.
Potentially that's the issue. I mean, we have to look at where we're going next year, and we've got to obviously be very careful in what we do with spending and borrowing as we move forward into next year.
Yeah, and that's you think that will limit sort of marching out into new directions and new programs?
I think we have to be very cautious. I mean, to go back to health care for a minute, a lot of this is based on the fact that, you know, some of the proposals out there have been, well, let's go tax tobacco. At the same time, the state is trying to limit tobacco use. So that's one of the reasons why we're very cautious about a large, expansive health care program, while, however, trying to find ways of insuring more people but reducing health care costs.
All right, quickly, gaming, that's still a controversial issue. There are, you know, all kinds of amendments that have been proposed. Is gaming still going to be a hot issue in the state for a while?
Well, it could be. I mean, to the extent it's tied to property taxes, and of course people are still waiting to see those results from the gaming and the property tax side, and, you know, there's a lot of proposals to use gaming across the board.
And if they don't take the money from gaming, and as always, good update. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.